It's quiet in here, isn't it? The noise of the city outside, the clinking of the ice in this glass. They're just a backdrop. But I know what the real noise is, the one you brought in with you. It's the sound of the silence on the other end of the line. It's the low, vibrating hum of personal defeat. Look at me. Look right here. I've been there. I know the taste of it. It's metallic and bitter, like chewing on copper wire. You wake up, maybe 3 hours of terrible, shallow sleep behind you, and before you even reach for the coffee, your hand goes to the phone, pulling up the message chain. That specific moment, that first sliver of consciousness where the adrenaline of the night before has burned off, leaving only the acidic ash of regret. That, my friend, is the cold sweat and the knot in your stomach. It is the morning after the desperate text. The shame isn't just emotional, it's physical. Tell me, when you scrolled up and saw the 5 consecutive messages you sent, messages that were neither necessary nor invited, did you feel that hollow, physical punch? That sudden realization that you have just violated the prime directive of your own self-worth? It's a specific kind of internal injury. It feels like your dignity is physically draining out of your body, pooling on the floor beneath your feet. You look at those words, those flimsy begging inquiries, and you recognize a stranger wrote them, a weak shadow of the man you claim to be, operating on pure, desperate impulse. You watch the ghost of that action haunt your day. You feel the weight, the literal, heavy sack of regret. And here is the rhetorical check we must engage in. Why do we keep picking up that heavy sack? Why, after swearing to ourselves, I will maintain my silence, I will stand on my own ground, do we crumple the moment the attention spigot is turned off? We do it because we confuse 2 things, 2 fundamental realities, and that confusion is the doorway to humiliation. This takes us straight to the antithesis, the necessary confrontation between what we are taught and what is naturally true. It is the necessary distinction between the myth of the romantic chase and the law of natural gravity. Listen, we are constantly force-fed a toxic lie by songs, movies, and a shallow culture that praises emotional chaos. The lie says persistence equals passion. The lie says, if you just push hard enough, if you just express your feelings forcefully and frequently enough, you will eventually break through the wall and be rewarded for your vulnerability. That is the gospel of the romantic hero, the one who wins by wearing down the defenses of the beloved. That is a beautifully packaged deception. It's poison dressed up as courage. Here is the hard truth of nature, the Stoic physics of relationships. Persistence in weakness is not passion, it is repulsion. Think about it like this. Gravity doesn't chase. The Earth does not send a series of escalating texts to the moon, demanding reassurance that it is still orbiting. Gravity simply is. It exerts a silent, constant, immense force, derived purely from its own mass, its own stability, and its own reality. High-value energy, true masculine presence, operates on the same principle. When you are chasing, when you are begging for the crumbs of someone else's focus, you are not acting as a massive, stable body. You are acting as a small, erratic satellite, desperately seeking to dock with a larger ship, expending precious internal fuel just to maintain trajectory in their vicinity. And what does this show? It shows a desperate lack of internal gravity. The world, and this includes the people whose attention you crave, is constantly measuring your internal gravitational pull. When you beg, you announce to the universe, my own internal mass is insufficient to keep me stable. I require external validation to remain in orbit. This is not cynicism, this is physics. When you reduce your own presence and increase your external demand, you diminish your relative value. The object of your desire feels that drop in pressure. They don't analyze it consciously, but they feel the shift from respectful admiration to needy supplication. And need, unearned and untethered, is always repulsive. The moment you start chasing, the dynamic is inverted. You have ceded the authority of your own life and handed the reins over to the recipient of your pleas. You are no longer standing on your bedrock, you are clinging to their ledge. The fatal error, the silent killer of your dignity is this: you confuse feeling with frame. We justify the desperate message, the double tap, the probing question, the passive-aggressive silence breaker by claiming emotional authenticity. I was just showing her how much I cared. I was being vulnerable. Stop lying to yourself. You were not texting because you were loving. You were texting because you were scared. Let's analyze the text history, the actual ledger of your dissent. The first message, perhaps, was a genuine offering. Had a great time last night thinking of you. A statement of fact, a seed planted. That is showing care. That is integrity. Then silence follows, 30 minutes, an hour, 2. This is the critical junction. The true Stoic response is to release the seed to the soil and return to the cultivation of the rest of the garden. You go back to your work, your discipline, your duty. You accept the silence as neutral, temporary input, irrelevant to the structure of your day. But that's not what happened, was it? Instead, your internal gyroscope began to spin wildly. Doubt crept in, dragging its heavy chains across the floor of your mind. Did I say the wrong thing? Is she angry? Is she with someone else? The second message arrives. This is where the collapse begins. It's framed as concern, but it's an interrogation disguised as politeness. Hey, just checking in. You've gone quiet. Everything okay on your end? Notice the shift in frame. The first message was about you, your experience, your feeling, offered without expectation. The second message is about her, her behavior, her silence, demanding an explanation and a justification. You have subtly shifted the focus from your own centeredness to her perceived duty to respond. And then comes the third, the triple text, the point of no return. Maybe it's a joke, maybe it's a trivial question about an irrelevant topic, but the subtext is deafening. Please acknowledge my existence. I cannot regulate my emotional state until you do. That is the moment the message changes from "I miss you" to "Why aren't you answering?" That shift is the collapse of frame. Frame, in this context, is the psychological boundary of your reality. It is the unwavering truth that your worth is intrinsic, autonomous, and non-negotiable, regardless of external validation or response. A strong frame dictates the rules of engagement. I operate from a place of sufficiency. A collapsing frame begs for external resources. I operate from a place of profound deficit. When you send the message fueled by fear, you are engaging in a transactional exchange of dignity. You are saying, I will trade my self-respect and my internal peace for a conditional response. You are trading sovereignty for access, and the universe, tragically, always honors the transaction. You might get the response you craved, a short, flippant, or even annoyed reply, but you have already paid the exorbitant price of your integrity. You may have secured a minute of fleeting attention, but you have secured a lifetime of internal shame for the act of supplication. This awareness must be brutal. You must look at the impulse to beg and correctly identify its root. It is not love. Love is patient and stands firm. Begging is the frantic, desperate scramble of fear. It is the primal scream of the ego demanding to be fed. To achieve mastery, you must stop identifying with the feeling of fear. You must watch it, acknowledge it, and consciously refuse to let it operate the controls of your communication. The message that comes from love is secure. The message that comes from fear is a demand. Once this awareness is internalized, once you understand the mechanism by which you betray yourself, you can no longer plead ignorance. You know exactly what you are doing when your fingers hover over the keyboard late at night, driven not by warmth, but by anxiety. The true humiliation is not the act itself. The humiliation is the permanent structural damage it inflicts on your internal architecture. Hierarchy is reinforced the moment you supplicate. Understand this. When you assume the position of the pleader, you have consciously elected the lower position in the relational hierarchy. Whether this hierarchy is acknowledged aloud or remains unspoken in the air between you, it solidifies instantly. You become a known quantity. You become the pleader. The pleader is defined by his neediness. He is predictable in his pursuit. His presence lacks the tension of potential loss. He is, to put it bluntly, reliable in his weakness. And here is the crushing reality. Every human being, regardless of how kind or compassionate they believe themselves to be, is subconsciously repulsed by excessive need. They may offer pity or even a bone of attention, but they will never offer respect to a suppliant. Respect flows upward towards strength, self-control, and independence. It rarely flows down to the desperate. Every single time you beg, every unsolicited defense, every frantic text, every unwarranted apology for the mere fact of your existence, you are paying a tax. You are paying in reduced respect from the person you are chasing, but worse, you are paying in diminished respect from yourself. The internal account of your self-esteem takes a direct, non-recoverable hit. This tax is not hidden. It manifests in the way they reply, in the dismissiveness of their tone, in the general feeling of effortlessness they display while you are performing acrobatics. They know they own your emotional state. They know they can delay gratification because you will still be there, waiting for the signal. The truly corrosive element here is that the payment of the simp tax changes the very atmosphere around you. It creates the smell of desperation. This isn't just a psychological phenomenon, it's almost olfactory. People react to scarcity. We value what is rare and hard-won. When you beg for attention, you are announcing that your attention, your time, and your emotional stability are cheap and readily available to anyone who bothers to toss a glance your way. You are a surplus commodity. That smell of desperation is not just perceived. It is felt by everyone around you, friends, colleagues, and most importantly, the person whose validation you seek. They feel the lack of gravity, the absence of internal structure. They feel the pressure you are generating, and pressure, when unwanted, is instinctively pushed away. We allow others to dictate our emotional state. We hand over the keys to our castle. We outsource our joy and our equilibrium to the whims of an external entity. And once those keys are given away, retrieving them becomes a Herculean labor, because the humiliation deepens with every further act of submission. Because the humiliation deepens with every further act of submission. This is where the structure collapses entirely. The transactional mistake is the cardinal error of the modern, unanchored man. He believes that effort expended in the service of another's approval should yield a reciprocal emotional payment. He approaches romance with the mentality of a civil engineer who submits the bill for services rendered. But affection is not an invoice, and genuine attraction cannot be purchased with convenience or compromise. What you are actually building is not love, but an escalating resentment, a toxic blend of self-pity and entitlement. You are not owed stability because you were pliable. You are not owed respect because you were available. She sees the ledger in your eyes. She sees the silent demand in your movements, and the transaction itself voids the sincerity of the gift. A favor done solely to earn a future reward is not generosity. It is manipulation, however clumsy and internally justified. And women, through evolutionary osmosis, possess a terrifyingly accurate sensor for emotional debt. They do not want a man who feels he is owed their happiness or their body. They want a man who is whole, who chooses them freely, and who would be just as whole if he chose someone else or no one at all. You have become a hollow pedestal, waiting for her to step up and provide the weight and definition you refuse to provide for yourself. The cycle deepens, not when she rejects you, but when you reject the man you promised yourself you would be. You start cutting corners on your own standards. You skip the gym because she wants a relaxed evening. You defer the difficult career decision because it might introduce stress into the shared domestic sphere. You silence the critical, objective voice inside your own head, the voice that says, "This is not right. This is not honorable. This is not how a serious man conducts himself." That inner voice is your anchor, your gyroscope, and you bury it alive under layers of compromise. You do this because the terror of her disapproval, the anxiety of potential solitude, is a more immediate, sharper pain than the slow, systemic rot of self-betrayal. And then comes the moment, the true nadir, when you look in the mirror, or perhaps catch your own reflection in a shop window, and you realize you despise the man staring back. This man is tentative. This man is defensive. He has the vocabulary of a supplicant and the posture of a victim. He is perpetually waiting for permission to exist in his own life. This humiliation is necessary. It is the acid that burns away the false shell of the nice guy, a construct built on cowardice disguised as benevolence. The nice guy is a fraud because his kindness is a currency, not a character trait. He is not genuinely generous, he is terrified. He needs assurance that he will not be abandoned. And the universe, being coldly efficient, delivers to him exactly what he broadcasts: instability. When you lose your internal structure, you lose your predictability, not in the sense of surprise and spontaneity, but in the sense of reliable gravity. You are a ship without ballast. You tack to every wind. She cannot build her security on shifting sands, and when she looks at you, she sees shifting sands. She sees a man whose mood is dictated by her tone of voice, whose schedule is dictated by her convenience, and whose sense of self is dictated by her momentary presence. We arrive now at the threshold, the point of no return. This is not a geographical location or a calendar date. It is a psychological singularity. To ascend, you must first acknowledge the contract you unwittingly signed. It is a pact with mediocrity. It is trading the potential for true excellence for the guaranteed comfort of the familiar. It is a desperate bargain made in the dark corners of the soul, where fear operates unchecked. The first, unavoidable step in returning to integrity is not to fix the relationship, nor to find a new one. It is to breach the contract of submission. You must declare a psychological severance from the approval you once craved. This severance is brutal and immediate. It requires a declaration of independence that is internal first and externally manifested second. You must stop reacting. If you have been conditioned to jump when she speaks, to anxiously check your phone, to craft elaborate defenses of your actions, or to always initiate reconciliation after conflict, you must stop the conditioning immediately. This period of severance feels like psychological warfare against your own habits. Every fiber of your conditioned self will scream at you to revert, to apologize for being distant, to seek the reassurance. Ignore the screaming. That noise is the sound of the old dependent self dying. We call this the great disengagement. The great disengagement is not a passive-aggressive relationship tactic. It is not designed to manipulate her into chasing you. If it is used as a tactic, it fails, because its foundation is still need. The great disengagement is the aggressive, deliberate rechanneling of 100% of your emotional energy, mental focus, and time back onto the architecture of your own life. If you spent 3 hours a day worrying about her mood, spend those 3 hours planning a business strategy, mastering a skill, or improving your physical fitness. If you spent 20 minutes a day crafting the perfect text message, spend those 20 minutes journaling your true, unvarnished thoughts. This immediate shift will cause discomfort in your partner. Do not mistake her discomfort for her caring about the new you. She cares about the sudden loss of the highly compliant, predictable system she had grown accustomed to utilizing. The pressure is off her, and you are the one who bore the pressure. When you withdraw, the system loses its anchor. She may provoke you. She may demand to know what is wrong. She may attempt to pull you back into the orbit of compliance. Your response must be measured, calm, and utterly devoid of performance. The new mandate is, I am busy building my structure. I do not have the time or energy to manage your emotional landscape. This response is terrifying because for the first time you are risking actual, real rejection rather than the slow, internal rejection you were suffering previously. But this is the critical distinction. Internal rejection destroys your character. External rejection merely tests your new foundation. Once the great disengagement is underway and the internal noise of anxiety begins to subside, replaced often by a deep, powerful silence, the work of ascent begins. The true ascent is the meticulous, painful process of retrieving those keys and reinforcing the walls of your citadel of self. The citadel is your mind, your character, your commitment to your own principles. Everything else is external. Relationships, wealth, reputation, health, all are subject to fortuna, to chance. The only thing impervious to fate is your judgment and your intention. What defines you now is not who approves of you, but the rigor of your adherence to your own self-imposed standard. Step 1. The inventory of integrity. You must catalogue every broken promise you have made to yourself. Integrity is not about being a good person in public. It is the quality of your internal structure, your commitment to your own code when no one is watching. Did you promise yourself you would write that novel, start that business, or achieve that physical landmark? When did you decide that the comfort of validation was a worthy trade for the pursuit of your potential? The man who consistently breaks promises to himself eventually becomes a man who cannot be trusted, even by himself. His word is worthless, even in the quiet of his own mind. This is the source of the profound internal lack of gravity. You have no moral weight because your word to yourself has no value. The ascent begins the moment you decide to resume the practice of personal integrity, not in grand gestures, but in minuscule, reliable acts. If you say you will read for 30 minutes, you read for 30 minutes. If you say you will wake at 5 a.m., you wake at 5 a.m. You are not doing this to achieve goals initially. You are doing it to re-establish trust with the man in the mirror. You are restoring the value of your own internal currency. Step 2. The practice of sufficient manhood. The greatest shift in perspective is realizing that you are, right now, sufficient. The dependent man operates from a position of deficit. He feels incomplete, requiring external resources to fill the void. The sovereign man operates from a position of sufficiency. He understands that his value is inherent, derived from his capacity for rational judgment, his commitment to virtue, and his disciplined application of effort. He is not seeking validation. He is applying his already existing integrity to the world. This is the central doctrine of power. You do not need her to be whole. This does not mean you do not desire her company. It means her absence does not cause your structure to crumble. Her presence is an addition, a benefit, an enjoyment, but never a requirement for psychological stability. When you interact with her now, your conversations must reflect this internal sufficiency. You speak from conviction, not from consensus seeking. You state your desires clearly, without attachment to her approval. You say no when your schedule or your principles demand it, not as a test, but as a simple factual statement of your boundaries. The boundary is the physical manifestation of self-respect. If you have no boundaries, you have declared that your time, your energy, and your attention are commodities available to the highest bidder of comfort. Step 3. The architecture of desire. Most men confuse genuine desire with anxious, needy attachment. Attachment is when your happiness depends entirely on possessing the object of desire. If she leaves, you are destroyed. Genuine desire is an appreciation of the object, paired with a profound internal calm about the outcome. You desire her, but you are indifferent to the mechanism of fate that dictates whether you keep her. This is not apathy, it is strategic wisdom. You exert influence where you have control, and you relinquish concern for things you do not. The goal is not to control her. The goal is to control the quality of the man she encounters. When you walk into a room, when you interact with her or with the world, you must bring the entirety of your structure with you. This structure is composed of reliable habits, clear priorities, and non-negotiable standards. You become a fixed point in a shifting universe. When a man achieves this state, the dynamic reverses instantly. She no longer feels the pressure of the anxious demand for validation. She feels the stabilizing gravity of a fully realized man. She is no longer dealing with a supplicant whose well-being rests in her hands. She is dealing with an equal whose well-being rests solely in his own. This is fundamentally more attractive, not because you are playing games, but because you are demonstrating the highest form of self-respect, which is the only respect others truly trust. We must destroy the fantasy of the soulmate and the expectation of constant, frictionless happiness. A relationship between two sovereign individuals is not the merging of two incomplete halves. It is the alliance of two separate, whole nations. These alliances are strong precisely because the internal government of each nation is robust. They do not need the other for survival, only for mutual benefit, shared purpose, and deep affection. If you re-enter the relationship space, either with your current partner or a future one, you must do so with the understanding that you are there to contribute your complete self, not to seek completion. The role of a serious man is not to chase fleeting pleasures or validation. It is to establish a moral and practical bedrock upon which he and those he cares for can build. This requires the development of disciplined detachment. Detachment is often misinterpreted as coldness. It is not. It is the ability to recognize that external outcomes are not a reflection of your inherent worth. If she leaves, it hurts, yes, but it does not negate the quality of the effort you put in, or the integrity of the man you were while you were with her. The disciplined man judges himself solely on the quality of his intention and his effort, not on the result. You have spent too long waiting for external permission to be the man you know you ought to be. You were waiting for the promotion, waiting for the apology, waiting for her mood to shift, waiting for the right moment. The right moment is now. The weight of your life, the gravity you feel lacking, the substance you crave, is created by the sum total of your deliberate choices, especially the difficult ones. It is not something bestowed upon you. It is something you must forge in the heat of sustained self-discipline. Do not mistake this for aggression or ego. This is not about winning an argument or asserting dominance over your partner. This is about assuming responsibility for your own spiritual and psychological weight. You must stop seeking permission to exist large. You do not get to outsource the heavy lifting of selfhood. You do not get to delegate the burden of gravity. The world does not respect the supplicant, and neither does your own soul. It respects the man who stands on his own ground, impervious to the chaos and the whims of the external, because he's perfectly solid within his own architecture. Go build that structure. Go do it.